Fine, so let's start doing it. Uh, so what is Ni? Let us first write down. We know that we need to have a linear interpolation for both displacements and section rotations, and that can be derived as linear interpolation Pi theta I Vj theta j, and we define interpolation transverse displacement within the element E is defined as Vi Ni plus Vj Njx, and similarly theta hat, the approximation for section rotations, theta I Ni plus theta j Nj. Now Ni is given by minus of xi minus x divided by not xi minus x, x minus xj divided by xj minus xi. Right, and Nj, interpolation function for node j. So this is the coordinates x. This is defined, node I is defined by xi, node j is defined by xj, and Nj would be given by Lagrangian interpolation would be x minus xi divided by xj minus xi, and this implies dni by dx is equal to minus 1 over xj minus xi. Right, so let us say let us define xj minus xi as Le, length of the element. Right, so xj minus xi is equal to Le. So this is right. So similarly dnj by dx is equal to 1 over L, and
Please take notes here.
oh, sorry about that, screen is not shared. But why did it, I did try to share it. Is it?
Yes, sir, no, this is it.
Yeah. So this is we are trying to do. I mean, we derived, we inferred that the highest order of derivative in both the interpolation, both the approximations for the primary variable of theta, the section rotation, the highest order of derivative in this weak form of the weighted residual statement is 1, and that implies that first order derivative should exist, and therefore a linear interpolation for theta should suffice, and a linear interpolation can be built by interpolation between two primary variables, values of the primary variable at two nodes that define the element. So, and similarly for V, transverse displacement, again the highest order of derivative is 1, and therefore linear interpolation in V should suffice, and linear interpolation can be derived by linear interpolation between the two values at nodes I and j. So V at node I and V at node j, and by interpolating between these two values we get a linear variation for V, and that provides the basis of that. And the interpolation model for linear interpolation can be easily derived from Lagrangian formula. Of course, you can derive the coefficients a0 plus a1x as the linear polynomial, and if you enforce the condition of interpolation, then you will arrive at the same expression. And it's a linear variation, so the derivative is going to be constant, so you get the derivative as minus 1 over LE and plus 1 over LE, so that it's a summation of derivatives is of course it is going to vanish, because sum of shape functions ni plus nj, they have to satisfy the unit sum condition. So ni plus nj is equal to 1. Always at every point in the domain, and that is why dni by dx plus dnj by dx should be equal to 0 everywhere in omega e element domain. Right, so what are the terms that we are looking at? So this is of course the bending moment at node I, so I can write this as minus mi. Is that? Yeah. Minus dni by dx. So we can xi to xj, we can actually do it as 1 over LE. So dni by dx is equal to minus 1 over LE, length of the element, multiplied by EI, and then again this is dni by dx theta I plus dni by dnj by dx theta j. So this is going to be theta j by LE. Okay, I can just take LE common factor, and this is only going to be theta j minus theta I dx, right? And here we have ni is equal to minus of x minus xi xj divided by xj minus xi. So that's ni multiplied by k ga into, we have this again dni and dnj, so we have vj minus vi divided by LE, and minus this expression that we have x minus xj by xj minus xi theta I x minus xi divided by xj minus xi theta j dx. Right? So this can be evaluated. So let us work out what is this going to be. and dx integrated over 0 to L, so this is going to be just LE, and this will cancel with this one, so essentially this will just look like LE. That's it. And this term, let us look at it. What do we have here? We can take out LE square common, and we have x minus xj multiplied by kga vj minus vi. Okay, so this can be actually taken out. kga vj minus vi and integral x minus xj dx 0 to LE, and plus this multiplier whatever we have here, this is going to be plus, so x minus xj multiplied by x minus xj theta I minus x minus xi theta j. That is what this expression is going to be. So what is that? This integral is equal to x square by 2 minus xj xi xj. So this is going to be evaluated at xi to xj. So xj square by 2 minus xj square minus xi square by 2 plus xj xi is that. So this becomes x I square minus xj square plus twice x I xj 1 by 2, right? So this is equal to x I minus xj whole squared by 2. So xi minus xj whole squared is equal to LE squared by 2. So LE squared gets cancelled with this LE squared, and eventually you will be left with that's all. Right? So did I please check this calculation? Whatever. Okay, so this is going to be negative of that, of course. There is negative sign here. And what happens to the next integral? Again, we work out term by term. So this is of course a square, so x square minus twice xj plus xj square, and this needs to be integrated from xi to xj. Let us keep the limits as same as xi to xj, because the interpolation functions are in terms of xi and xj. So this becomes x cube by 3 plus x square xj, minus x square xj plus xj square, and this is to be evaluated between xi to xj. So what you have got here is xj cube by 3 minus xj cube plus xj cube, right, minus xi cube by 3 plus xi square xj minus xi xj square. So this becomes xj cube minus 3 xj square xi plus 3 xi square xj xi square and minus xi cube by 3. So this is equal to x j minus xi whole cube by 3. So that is equal to le cube by 3. So this integral here, that represents le cube by 3, and now we can similarly work out. So this term is going to be plus 1 over le squared, and this term is le cube by 3 theta I, and minus what is the integral of this term. Let us work out. What are you doing? Are you not working it out, or just watching me toil? So the integral of this product, so what is this product? X square minus xxi minus xxj plus xij, right? And there is negative here ahead of this dx xi to xj. So what have you got here? So negative sign is, of course, let it be x cube by 3 minus x square xi by 2 minus x square xj by 2 plus xi xj x, and this needs to be evaluated in the limits xi to xj. So what have you got here? Let's see. Xj cube by 3 minus xj square xi by 2 minus xj cube by 2 plus xi xj square, and then minus xi cube by 3 plus xi cube by 2 plus xi square xj by 2 plus, or rather minus xi square xj. So what have we got? Let us see. Let me clear some working space here. How do I miss large chalkboard?
L cube by 6.
Pardon?
This will be L cube by 6.
L cube by 6, which one?
So this expression.
Oh, total expression you mean? Okay, fine. So you evaluate it and it works out to L cube by 6. Fine. So negative L cube by 6?
Positive.
So this total expression is L cube by 6 and there is negative sign here. Or this negative sign gets absorbed. Tell me that.
The negative sign will be there.
Okay, fine. So this is how it is. So that's the equation. We solved this entire thing and now we can work it out, express it little simpler term. Should be some block delete feature somewhere, I don't know. Okay, so now we can correct the terms. So 0 is equal to minus mi plus ei by le. Theta j minus theta I and minus something wrong. What is happening?
So that kg will also be multiplied in the expression. The expression.
Yeah, so this will also have kGa. Yeah. So that's what I was wondering. What is happening? It's dimensionally inconsistent. So plus minus kGa Le divided by 6, and we have twice theta j minus theta I. No. Theta j minus twice theta I. Right? And then we have KGA VJ minus VI.
So I am getting Q by 6 in positive.
ठीक है, work it out, whatever is correct sign, check out. The idea is you get what I wanted to demonstrate is how do you work out your way through the choice of interpolation function and evaluate these integrals. I mean, this integral evaluation may be tedious to begin with, but once you evaluate, these are standard results that can be encoded, because you can see that these are in terms of the length of the element, right? Length of the element and element properties, flexural rigidity, shear rigidity, and shape factor of that depends on the shape of the cross section of the beam. So based on that, this is a standard result, and it's exactly like Ayar-Bernoulli beam relations. There are only 4 coefficients. Similarly, you have this kind of standard stiffness matrix that will govern this shear flexible behavior. So this is for the first equation. W is equal to Ni. We get similar kind of equation for W, choice of W as Nj, and again we have same set of similar set of equations, and as you can see, the coefficients are all 4 degrees of freedom are involved here: theta I, theta j, Vi, and Vj. And similarly, we will also get similar set of equations by invoking working with this second row of the equation, and choice of W2 as Ni, and that will give us one equation, and W2 as Nj, that will fetch us second equation after we make substitution for this interpolated model for V hat and theta hat, and everything is known in they are known functions of x, and they can be evaluated in the given range of xi to xj, and equilibrium equations can be established, and eventually you will end up with 4 equations for 4 unknowns, and that will end up with your standard Vi, theta I, Vj, theta j is equal to, again it will go through the same set. So what are the equations? You will get equations, I mean these relations only in this Q mode. What is the differential equation? So second row, this is what you have. So you will get forcing function equivalent node load vector only corresponding to second equation. First equation, there is no loading term here. So the coupling is of course true between the degrees of freedom, and the effect of load will be incorporated through the coupling behavior. So you have QL by 2 and 0, QL by 2, 0. That is what the loading term are going to be, right? You can work out this integral for Ni and Nj, and that is what the terms are going to be. It's QL by 2. So Le. And then of course there would be the standard result. So Vi minus Mi plus Vj Nj. Right. So because at this term, if we assume clockwise shear to be positive and sagging moments to be positive, then this is actually going to be minus mi, and this is going to be vi. So this is going to be vj, and this is going to be mj. So vj is going to be negative and vi is going to be positive. So that's the sign convention. Right? So that's the element level equation, and once you solve for that, all set, you set the, define the, you find out, assemble in the normal course, impose the boundary conditions, and solve for the unknown. And once you have the unknowns, primary variables at the nodes, you can go back and substitute in the element level to find out what are the transverse displacement at any point and what are the section rotations at any point. Simple, isn't it? Appears to be much simpler than cubic interpolation polynomial of Euler-Bernoulli hypothesis. Doesn't it? What? Any reactions on this development of this shear flexible beam equations?
Sir, with the two weighted residual statements, we will be getting the two sets of J, theta, and theta.
Yes. So there are two weighted residual statements, and there are two weighting functions for that, W1 and W2, isn't it? That is what we derived here. So these are the residual statement of weighted residual. I mean, this is the domain residual 1, this is domain residual 2, and we express this weighted residual statement as a matrix of weighting functions multiplied by inner product between this matrix of weighting function and the domain residuals, and evaluate it. Right? So this is in the matrix form. Of course, we can take them row by row. So I mean, this is again going to be a vector, right? This is 2 by 2 matrix, this is 2 by 1 vector. So this is again going to be, product is again going to be 2 by 1 vector. So we look at row wise. So first row is given by W1 R1 omega d omega integrated over the domain. Second row is W2 R2 omega d omega integrated over the domain and equate it to 0. So these are the two equations that we get. Right? So operationally it is really makes no difference whether it is you have one weighted residual statement or n number of weighted residual statements. The treatment is going to be exactly identical, a little bit tedious, but no different from what you have seen for one equation. It's just that you will have several rows of weighted residual statements to deal with. That's all. Right, but then there are several rows of weighted residual statements, but then the derivative in those weighted residual statements is of much lower degree, much lower order. So in case of Euler-Bernoulli hypothesis, your weak form of the weighted residual statement, there was only one weighted residual statement agreed, but that weak form required second order derivatives. In this case, shear flexible deformation theory, you are dealing with two weighted residual statements for one element, but The order of derivatives is only one, first order, and that is what allows you to use a simple C0 continuous interpolation model of linear Lagrangian interpolation, which is very simple, very easy to construct. And the working out of the integrand is also very simple. You don't have too many terms and too many powers to deal with.
But then maybe having two approximate function with
Yes, there are two approximations, V hat and theta hat, because the transverse displacement is decoupled from section rotation. In Euler-Bernoulli hypothesis, because of the assumption that shear deformations are zero, then the section rotations are identical with the slope of the deflected shape. Now when you decouple this, I mean if the shear deformations are going to be there, then the slope of the deflected shape will also include the shear deformation, which is of course not going to be same as the rotation of the section because of pure flexure. And that is why you need to treat both of these quantities independent of each other, and the moment you introduce this independence, that is what allows you to interpolate them as a lower degree polynomial. I mean just first degree interpolation model, and you don't worry about continuity of the slope of the deflected shape. It is the section rotation which needs to be continuous, and it is the transverse displacement which needs to be continuous. Right? So in the Euler-Bernoulli hypothesis, your approximation model involved not just the transverse displacement but also the slope of the transverse displacement curve, deflected curve. And that is what led to that cubic Hermite interpolation polynomial, because the interpolation model required to be continuous at least up to first degree. Second order derivative had to exist, and that can only be ensured by ensuring that interpolation is continuous across element boundaries at least up to first order derivative. No such requirement in case of shear flexible beam, because the transverse displacement are independent of section rotations. Right. So they contain independent information, and therefore they are interpolated independently. And that's how you break it down. 4-term approximation, earlier Euler-Bernoulli beam, you had 4-term interpolation model. Now you break it down into 2-term approximation for each of the two variables. There is 2-term approximation for transverse displacement. There is 2-term approximation for the section rotation. So it is, if you look at it, it is only a rearrangement and reassignment of the roles. The number of variables is still the same. In Euler-Bernoulli beam also you have 4 degrees of freedom in an element, and in this shear deformation flexible theory, you again have 4 degrees of freedom in this 2-node element that we are looking at. Fine.
So like with one weighted residual statement, we are getting one EHX, and with the another weighted residual statement, we are getting another EHX. So if you want to find the displacement,
No. Please repeat. What did you say?
so with one weighted residual statement, we will be getting create approximate function. One approximate function.
See-
Another.
See, these weighted residual statements are not independent. The governing differential equation itself is coupled governing differential equation. You cannot solve these differential equations, these two differential equations independent of each other.
Yes, sir, but like if you solve that first weighted residual statement, you will be getting one approximate function.
Fine. You are not getting approximation function, you are getting equilibrium equation. You get one equation from one weighted residual statement for one choice of weighting function. You get one equation for the same statement, choice of another weighting function gives you another equation. Similarly, you go to the second weighted residual statement, choice of one weighting function gives you one equation, choice of another weighting function gives you another equation. So together you have four equations, and these four equations are to be taken as a whole representative of the approximation. Right? After you impose the boundary condition and solve those equations, you will get the primary variables at the nodes. Whichever is available, Vi, theta I, Vj, theta j, whatever are free degrees of freedom, you will get those. And then you come back to element level approximation. V hat is equal to Vi Ni plus Vj Nj. Find out what is the transverse displacement. Theta hat is equal to theta I Ni plus theta j Nj. Find out what is theta section rotation at any point, and using these transverse displacement and section rotation, you can find out the bending moment and shear force at any point. Bending moment is going to be Ei times d theta by dx at any point. Shear force is going to be K times Ga multiplied by dv by dx at any point.
Yes, sir.
Right? dv by dx minus theta at any point. Right? Because you are modeling you want shear deformations. So dv by dx includes the slope, change of slope because of flexure as well as because of shear. So when you subtract this theta, so you remove the contribution of the change of contribution to change of slope due to flexure. So that is what you left. What you have is the shear deformation, and you multiply it with shear rigidity, and you find out what is the shear force at that section. Right? So complete this four equations, and then again look at the same cantilever problem and try to develop or same cantilever. We dealt with fixed problem, but you can look at a cantilever beam problem with uniformly distributed load and try to solve it using this shear beam model, one shear beam model, let's say, just to make it simpler. So when you do cantilever beam model using one shear beam, this shear flexible deformation theory, then the degrees of freedom at one end are going to be restrained, at the other end they are going to be free, so you will have two unknowns to solve for, and you will have two equations by imposing the boundary conditions. After you impose the boundary conditions, there will be two free variables, free degrees of freedom, and solve for that. Right, so once you go through this, you will realize that it is much simpler to work with shear flexible deformation theory in comparison with the Euler-Bernoulli beam element. It's much simpler to program, it's much simpler to implement, it's much simpler to work out. Right? So, too good to be true, you relax a major assumption in Eiler-Bernoulli hypothesis and you are moving towards a more generalized theory, and by moving towards a more generalized theory, you seem to have developed a simpler formulation. Right? So, it can't be so good. Right? As the saying goes, there are no free lunches. The same holds true here. So we will see what is problem with this formulation. As of now, it all looks very hunky-dory. Everything is falling in place very beautifully. It looks like a made for each other kind of situation. But there are dangers lurking behind the obvious. We'll see in our next lecture. Thank you.